"Don't come for Christmas," my mother texted coldly. My brother added, "If you show up, we'll pretend we don't know you." That single message shattered the fragile hope I had left. I watched their glowing holiday photos online, pretending everything was perfect while I sat in silence, excluded. But fate has its own cruel humor. When my brother's best friend saw my photo, he stumbled on a secret they had buried for years. Suddenly, the perfect family illusion cracked, and within 5 days, everything collapsed. They thought they erased me, but I was about to own the night. The first snow had just begun to settle outside my window when the photo appeared on my feed. There it was again, the Carter family Christmas tableau, polished and perfect. My mother, Linda, in her emerald dress, clutching my brother Michael's arm as if he were the crown jewel of her life. The tree glowed in the background, ornaments sparkling like fragments of a fairy tale. Their smiles were wide, their posture proud. To anyone scrolling past, it looked like the image of happiness. To me, it was a carefully staged performance, one I had been cut from long ago. I stared at the photo for longer than I should have, feeling that sharp sting of nostalgia and envy twist inside me. For a foolish moment, I let myself hope. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe, just maybe, there would be a call, a message, some sign that I was still considered family. My breath fogged the window as I whispered to myself, this year, maybe they'll forgive me. Forgive me? For what? For existing? For being the daughter who never fit their golden narrative? I picked up my phone, the cold light of the screen reflecting back my anxious face. I waited for something, anything, to appear. And then it did. The notification buzzed and my heart leapt. This could be it, I thought. This could be the moment they let me back in. My thumb trembled as I opened the message. Don't come for Christmas. It was from my mother. 3 words, stripped of affection, stripped of warmth. A verdict, not an invitation. I felt my chest tighten, breath catching as if the room had no air. Before I could fully process it, another message followed, this time from Michael. If you show up, we'll pretend we don't know you. His laughter was almost audible through the words, a cruel echo of all the times he had mocked me growing up. My hand shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. It wasn't just rejection. It was erasure. They weren't telling me to stay away. They were telling me I no longer existed in their story. I sat frozen, staring at the glowing screen in disbelief. The holiday lights from outside flickered through my blinds, but inside me, everything went dark. I wanted to scream, to rage, to beg, but instead, I sat in silence, clutching the phone like it was some kind of weapon aimed at my own heart. Minutes passed before another message came from my mother, softer this time, almost feigned concern. We're doing this for your own good, Emily. It's better this way. Gaslighting. I knew the tactic too well. She was trying to rewrite the narrative to make me believe that being excluded was an act of love. It twisted my stomach into knots. For years, she had done this, turned her cruelty into kindness, her favoritism into reason, her neglect into necessary discipline, and like a child desperate for love, I had swallowed it whole. But not tonight. Tonight, it burned. My thumb hovered over the delete button and I pressed it with finality, watching the words vanish from the screen. But they didn't leave my mind. They echoed, carving wounds deeper than any blade could. My hands trembled as I placed the phone face down on the table, trying to steady my breath. For a moment, I thought I could force myself to forget. Pretend it hadn't happened. Pretend I didn't care. But then the memory surfaced, uninvited and sharp. I was 10 years old again, standing in the living room in my best dress, waiting to be noticed. It was Christmas morning, and Michael tore through gifts like a conquering hero, each present larger than the last. Mother beamed, Father laughed. And me? I held a small box in my lap, unopened, unnoticed. When I finally dared to tug at the ribbon, Michael snatched it away, sneering. Even Santa knows you don't deserve much. Mother didn't scold him. She didn't comfort me. She simply turned away, adjusting an ornament on the tree, as if I weren't even there. That was the year I learned invisibility could hurt more than cruelty. The memory dissolved into the present, and I found myself gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles whitened. I had thought, after all these years, that maybe things could change. But here it was again. The same message, the same dismissal, wrapped in tinsel and lies. The phone buzzed once more, and I flinched as if burned. My heart stuttered, torn between hope and dread. But this time, it wasn't from them. It was a different number, unfamiliar. A simple line appeared on the screen, almost like a whisper. "They're hiding something from you." My breath caught in my throat. The words pulsed on the screen, demanding attention. I didn't know who sent it or why, but suddenly the rejection felt less like an ending and more like the opening to something I wasn't ready to face. I leaned back, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, the phone clutched tightly in my hand. For the first time that night, a flicker of something stirred inside me. Not hope, not yet, but curiosity, and with it, a spark of defiance I hadn't felt in years. The morning after the text, I woke to a storm of notifications. My phone buzzed relentlessly, one message after another, each one carrying a sting I hadn't expected. I opened one, then another, and my stomach twisted. My mother had gone live on Facebook the night before. In the video, Linda sat at the kitchen table with the Christmas tree glowing faintly behind her, her voice trembling as if the weight of the world sat on her shoulders. Tears streaked down her cheeks. "Emily ruined last Christmas," she sobbed. "She made it impossible for us to celebrate as a family. We love her, but she has always been difficult." Her words spread like wildfire. Dozens of neighbors, distant relatives, even old school friends chimed in with sympathy. Comments scrolled by, offering prayers for Linda's strength, applauding Michael for being the good son, the one who stayed loyal. No one asked for my side of the story. No one wondered where I was. By midday, the consequences were tangible. 2 clients I had worked with for months suddenly emailed, citing unforeseen changes. A friend canceled our coffee plans, writing only, "I think it's best we take some space." Space. That word echoed like a slap. Space wasn't what they wanted. They wanted distance. From me, the stain, the scapegoat. I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the silent phone, the glow of the television painting the room in cold blues and whites. A Hallmark movie played in the background, a family reunited, laughter under twinkling lights, a father lifting his daughter into the air. The kind of love I used to dream was waiting for me if I just tried harder. A forkful of reheated pasta cooled untouched on my plate. My eyes burned, and without warning, tears slid down my face. They weren't the dramatic kind, the ones that came with sobs and shaking shoulders. They were quiet, unyielding, the kind that reminded me I was still human despite their best efforts to erase me. I pulled my knees up to my chest, staring at the flickering images on the screen. For a brief moment, I let myself sink into the illusion. The fake family on TV felt more real than my own. The ache in my chest deepened, pressing against my ribs until I could hardly breathe. When the credits rolled, I clicked the TV off. The silence was deafening. That was when my phone lit up again. Another message from the unknown number that had reached me last night. "They're hiding something from you." I stared at the words, a chill running down my spine. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to respond, but I stopped. Whoever it was, they knew something I didn't, something my family had buried deep. And the timing, right after my exclusion, right after my mother's performance, was too sharp to be coincidence. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat in the dark, clutching the phone, waiting for another clue. But none came. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, the truth was beginning to slip. Michael's best friend, Ethan, scrolled through LinkedIn during his lunch break. He stumbled across my profile, Emily Carter, consultant, with a modest but respectable career. He hadn't seen me in years, not since college days when he tagged along with Michael at family events. Curious, he clicked through, noting my work history, the small achievements I had fought tooth and nail to earn. Something about my name triggered a memory. Years ago, he had overheard Michael and Linda arguing words like trust fund, inheritance, and it's not for you floated back into his mind. He remembered Michael's rage that night, the way Linda had hushed him, insisting no one could ever know. Ethan's curiosity gnawed at him. He did a quick search, cross-referencing my father's estate records. It didn't take long to uncover a detail hidden in plain sight, a trust fund established in my name. Emily Carter, sole beneficiary. Not Michael. His pulse quickened. He leaned back in his chair, muttering, "So that's what this is about." For a moment, he considered staying silent. Michael was his friend, after all. But silence had its own weight. He opened his phone, typed a note to himself, then tucked it away. He thought no one would know. That evening, at a holiday gathering, Ethan filmed a short video for Instagram. It was harmless, or so he believed. Just him, joking with friends, glass of wine in hand. But in the background, a folder sat open on his laptop, the trust fund file visible for a split second. The camera caught the name, Emily Carter. No one at the party noticed. Ethan didn't notice, but online, nothing stays hidden for long. Within hours, someone paused the video, zoomed in, and shared a screenshot. And just like that, the secret began to leak into the world. The whispers turned into roars within a single day. My mother went live again, this time seated by the fireplace, her hands folded dramatically in her lap. Linda knew her audience, knew how to pull on their sympathy like a puppeteer with strings. "She's always been selfish," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound authentic. "Ungrateful. No matter what we gave her, it was never enough. Emily has always tried to tear this family apart." Her words sliced through me like broken glass. I watched the live stream replay on my phone, stomach twisting with every exaggerated sigh. The comments streamed in, dozens, then hundreds, supporting her, praising Michael, condemning me. They didn't know me, but they didn't need to. They believed the version of me my mother invented. But then something happened, something Linda hadn't planned for. As she dabbed her eyes with a tissue, viewers noticed a document lying on the edge of the table. To her, it was just clutter, old papers she hadn't bothered to move. To the internet, it was a gold mine. Someone paused the video, zoomed in, and posted the screenshot to Twitter. The words were faint but legible. Last will and testament, and beneath it, the name Emily Carter. Within hours, the tide began to shift. Commenters who had once sided with her now demanded answers. Threads sprang up analyzing the document, speculating about its meaning. "If Emily was in the will, why would Linda say she was cut off?" one asked. Another wrote, "This doesn't add up. Something's being hidden." By nightfall, a hashtag was trending. "Our justice for Emily." My phone exploded with messages. At first, I thought they'd be more insults, more judgment. But they weren't. Strangers wrote to me with compassion, with outrage on my behalf. "You don't deserve this. Fight back, Emily. The truth will win." Hundreds of them poured in, like waves crashing against the walls I had built around myself. And yet, I hesitated. Sitting alone in my dark apartment, scrolling through the flood of support, I whispered, "Should I fight? Am I even strong enough?" The thought of standing against Linda and Michael, against the whole narrative they had built for decades, felt impossible. My chest tightened with the weight of it. I closed the phone and stepped outside, desperate for air. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I walked aimlessly through the quiet streets. Families laughed in their living rooms, warm light spilling from their windows. Through one window, I saw a father lifting his child, the little girl's arms stretched wide in delight. In another, a mother kissed her son's forehead as they decorated a tree. Each glimpse stabbed deeper, reminding me of what I had never truly had. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself, the icy wind biting at my cheeks. The city seemed alive with joy, and I was just a shadow moving through it, a ghost of someone no one wanted. My tears froze before they reached my lips, and I thought, maybe they were right. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was better off disappearing. It was then, as I crossed a dimly lit street, that I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate. I turned, and an older woman approached, bundled in a heavy coat, her breath visible in the cold. Her eyes held a strange intensity, like she had been searching for me. "Emily Carter?" she asked softly. I hesitated, my heart hammering. "Yes. Who are you?" Her gloved hand reached into her bag, pulling out a weathered envelope. The paper was yellowed at the edges, the handwriting on the front unmistakable. My father's. "He asked me to keep this safe," she said. "For his daughter. For Emily." I froze, unable to speak, my pulse pounding in my ears. My father had been gone for years, and yet here was a piece of him, suddenly thrust into my hands. The woman pressed the envelope into my palm, her expression heavy with something between sorrow and urgency. "He wanted you to have it when the time was right." I clutched it, my fingers trembling. My throat was dry, words refusing to form. The world seemed to narrow to the envelope, the weight of it almost unbearable. What was inside? Why had he hidden it from everyone else? I slid a finger under the seal, my heart racing as though I were about to open a door I could never close again. The paper crackled, the silence around me deafening. And then I stopped. I couldn't do it. Not yet. I stood in the snow, envelope in hand, unable to move, unable to breathe. Whatever lay inside could change everything or destroy me completely. My hands shook as I finally tore open the envelope. The paper inside was folded neatly, the edges worn from years of waiting. I unfolded it slowly, my breath shallow, my heart bracing for a truth I wasn't sure I wanted. The handwriting was unmistakably his, my father's strong, deliberate strokes. My eyes blurred before I could read a word. When I blinked them clear, the first line gutted me. "My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, it means I was not able to protect you the way I should have." I pressed the page to my lips, tears falling freely. He had known. He had seen the favoritism, the cruelty, the way Linda had carved me out of the family portrait. All those years I thought he had turned away from me, maybe even agreed with her. He hadn't. He had been powerless, or maybe afraid, but he hadn't been blind. The letter continued, each word sinking deeper. He admitted he had let Linda's influence dominate, that he had failed me. But then, my breath caught, he wrote the truth that shattered everything my mother and brother had ever told me. "I want you to know that you are my chosen heir. The trust, the inheritance, the legacy I built, it is yours, Emily, not Michael's. I left the documents in the hands of my attorney. When the time comes, they will find you. Do not let your mother convince you otherwise." I covered my mouth with trembling fingers. For so long, I had been told I was unwanted, unnecessary. And now, here was proof that I had been wanted all along, that my father had seen me, chosen me, even if he hadn't lived to fight for me. By the time I reached the end of the letter, my sobs had softened into something else. Relief. Resolve. The last line was a command, not a request. "If you are reading this, Emily, then the time for truth has come. It is time for everything to be revealed." The page shook in my hands. My father was speaking across the years, demanding I rise. I wiped my tears, feeling heat surge through me. For the first time in decades, I wasn't just the forgotten daughter. I was the rightful heir. I folded the letter carefully, placing it back in its envelope, and for the first time in my life, I felt steady. My voice was hoarse, but the words came firm. "It ends now." The next morning, I made my way to my father's attorney, a man named Robert Whitfield. His office smelled of old leather and dust, the kind of place where secrets waited to be unearthed. He recognized me immediately, his expression shifting from surprise to grim acknowledgement. "I wondered when this day would come," he said. He pulled out a thick file, sliding it across the desk. Inside were documents, notarized and undeniable: the trust fund, the will, the statements my father had prepared to ensure the truth could not be erased. I sat there for hours, reviewing every line, every signature. Each page built the foundation of my father's intention. It was all there, undeniable. I had the proof Linda had spent years burying. Meanwhile, outside that quiet office, the storm raged louder. The hashtag #DocJusticeForEmily grew by the hour. Strangers posted side-by-side comparisons of Linda's live streams, pointing out inconsistencies, screenshots of the will visible on her table, and now theories about why she was hiding it. I hadn't said a word publicly, but the tide had already turned. Then came the twist that nearly made me laugh through my disbelief. A cousin I barely knew, my father's sister's daughter, made a post on Twitter tagging me directly. "I stayed quiet for too long," she wrote, "but I can't anymore. Linda has lied for years. She manipulated my uncle and cut Emily out of the family. I was there. I heard the fights. Emily, if you're reading this, you're not crazy. You're not wrong. You are the one your father wanted." The post exploded. Thousands retweets within hours. The truth was no longer mine alone. It was public property, and the internet was demanding accountability. I stared at the screen, pulse racing. It was no longer a question of whether I should fight. The fight had already begun, and I was at the center. Still, I knew I couldn't act recklessly. This wasn't just about emotions anymore. It was about timing, strategy, and precision. If I wanted justice, I had to play it smart. So I waited, letting the storm grow. And then the announcement came. The Carter family estate would hold a formal gathering to read the will publicly. Everyone expected Michael's name to be called. They believed he was the heir, the golden son. But I knew better. Sitting alone in my small apartment, I folded my father's letter one more time and whispered, "I'll be there." The thought terrified me, but it also set me free. The conference room was dressed in false dignity, polished oak table, velvet curtains drawn tight against the morning light, and the faint scent of pine candles meant to make the occasion feel festive. But there was nothing festive about it. This was war disguised as ceremony. Linda and Michael sat together at the head of the table, their posture regal, their smiles practiced. Around them sat relatives, distant cousins, family friends, all gathered to witness what they assumed would be Michael's coronation as the rightful heir. I entered quietly, my heels clicking against the marble floor. For a moment, every eye turned toward me. Gasps rippled through the room. Linda's smile faltered, then hardened into ice. Michael smirked as if he had already won. "You shouldn't be here," Linda whispered across the table. Her tone was calm, but her knuckles were white where they gripped the chair. Before I could respond, Robert, my father's attorney, stood. His presence silenced the murmurs. He adjusted his glasses, his face solemn as he held the folder of documents. "We are here today to honor the final wishes of the late Mr. Carter," he began, "and to disclose his intentions regarding his estate." Michael straightened his tie, leaning back confidently. Linda placed a hand on his arm, a gesture of triumph. I felt my pulse in my throat, the air heavy with anticipation. Robert cleared his throat, then read aloud the words I had already memorized. "The sole heir and the beneficiary of the Carter family trust is my daughter, Emily Carter." Silence. Then chaos. Michael shot up from his seat, knocking over a glass of water. "This is a lie!" he shouted. His voice cracked, a mix of outrage and desperation. "Everyone knows I was promised everything!" Linda's face drained of color. She tried to speak, but Robert raised a hand, continuing, "Furthermore, evidence has surfaced that attempts were made to alter or conceal these documents after Mr. Carter's passing. An investigation is being conducted into possible fraud and obstruction." The words hit like thunder. Murmurs turned into a storm of whispers. Phones were pulled out, messages sent, cameras recording. This was no longer a private matter. It was public spectacle. Linda's composure cracked. "You don't understand," she stammered. "It was for the family's good. Emily isn't capable." I turned to her, my voice steady though my hands trembled beneath the table. "All your life you protected him," I said, nodding toward Michael. "But tell me, Mother, who will protect you now?" The question hung in the air like a blade. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not just fear of exposure, but fear of standing alone. Michael's rage turned feral. "This is your fault!" he screamed at her, his finger stabbing the air. "You told me it was mine. You said you had it handled. You made me believe." His words tumbled over each other, wild and bitter. "You lied to me, just like you lied to everyone else." Linda reached for him, but he yanked his arm away. "Don't touch me," he spat. "You ruined everything." The room was electric, tension snapping like wires under strain. Relatives who had once whispered doubts now voiced them openly. She lied. She faked the papers. How could she do this to her own daughter? Linda crumbled under the weight of it, her mask of maternal perfection shattering piece by piece. Tears streaked down her face, but no one rushed to console her. The crowd had turned, the illusion broken. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the floor. I didn't need to say more. The truth had spoken louder than I ever could. I walked toward the door, each step deliberate, each breath lighter than the last. Behind me, voices rose into a storm. Michael's accusations, Linda's sobs, the relentless buzz of relatives dissecting every word. But I didn't turn back. Not once. At the threshold, I paused, placing my hand on the polished wood of the door. For a moment, I closed my eyes, letting the sound of their chaos wash over me. The family that had once defined me, rejected me, erased me, was now tearing itself apart without my help. And then, with a soft push, I closed the door behind me. The sound of it echoed, final and sharp, cutting through their voices. The argument continued inside, muffled but furious, while I stood in the quiet hallway, free. For the first time, silence felt like peace. The days after the will reading unfolded like an aftershock. News outlets picked up the story, headlines flashing words like family betrayal and hidden heiress. For once, the narrative was not twisted against me. For once, my name was not whispered with disdain, but spoken with vindication. Emily Carter, rightful heir. Emily Carter, the daughter who endured. I scrolled through the avalanche of articles and posts, numb but awake, watching as strangers dissected every moment of my mother's live streams, every inconsistency, every lie. But the tide had shifted. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer erased. Support came from unexpected places. Survivors of similar families messaged me, sharing stories of favoritism, scapegoating, and betrayal. Their words poured into my inbox like confessions in a chapel. You gave me courage. I thought I was the only one. Because of you, I'm speaking my truth. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel broken. I felt seen. And then came Ethan. He reached out quietly, almost sheepishly, asking if we could meet. We sat across from each other in a small cafe, snow falling gently against the windows. I didn't mean for any of it to get out like that, he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. That video, it was careless. But maybe it was meant to happen. I studied him, searching for any trace of pity or ulterior motive. But there was none, just honesty, maybe even regret. You were the spark, I said softly. Without you, I don't know if the truth would have ever found daylight. He smiled, a little shyly. Then maybe I was just in the right place at the right time. From that day, Ethan became more than a bystander. He became a friend, an ally, a steady voice reminding me that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't wrong. And in the quiet hours, when the weight of everything threatened to crush me, he reminded me of something else, that moving forward didn't mean moving alone. The first time I was introduced publicly with the title my father had written, The Heir, I felt an unfamiliar warmth rise inside me. Not pride, not arrogance, something gentler, vindication. I stood before a crowd, reporters buzzing, cameras flashing, and for the first time I didn't shrink. I lifted my chin, and when I heard the words, Emily Carter, the heir, I smiled. Not because of the money, not because of the power, but because I had finally reclaimed my name, But inheritance wasn't the true victory. The true victory was survival. The true victory was transformation. I began to build something new, not a family of blood, but a family of choice. Friends who had weathered their own storms, strangers who had written to me, people who understood the silent wounds of toxic homes. We gathered, we listened, we healed together. Our stories braided into something stronger than any inheritance could provide. One evening, sitting in my apartment that no longer felt small but sacred, I opened a camera and spoke. Not to my mother, not to my brother, but to anyone who needed to hear it. "My name is Emily Carter," I began. "For years I was told I wasn't enough, that I was unwanted, that my voice didn't matter. But I'm here to tell you, it does. Yours does too. You are not what they say you are. You are more." I started a channel, a place where people could come to share, to breathe, to find hope after being broken by the people meant to love them. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't polished, but it was real, and that made it powerful. The messages poured in again, but this time they weren't filled with pity. They were filled with gratitude, with courage, with solidarity. I wasn't just Emily, the forgotten daughter. I was Emily, the survivor. Emily, the voice. I learned that the sweetest revenge was not in tearing down Linda or Michael. It wasn't in watching their reputations crumble, though they did. It wasn't in seeing the investigations expose their fraud, though that happened too. The sweetest revenge was in my freedom, in living fully, joyfully, authentically, while they remained trapped in their web of lies and bitterness. On a quiet night, I walked again through the snowy streets, but this time I didn't feel like a ghost. I passed families laughing in their windows, and instead of pain, I felt peace. My story was different, but it was mine, and I had finally chosen to own it. I paused beneath a street lamp, the snow drifting softly around me, and whispered into the night, as if to my father, "I'm free." And then, turning toward the camera of my phone, I left one final message for those who had followed my story. If your family ever tried to erase you, if they told you your voice didn't matter, what will you do? Stay silent or rise and stand as I did? The recording ended. The question lingered.